Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you really want to live in the body and mind you really want to be living in. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of food and body freedom, as well as find more meaning and more moments of joy in life, you are in the right place. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here and for listening to the show. I hope you're all doing great. On today's show, I talk with Dr. Jade Teta about all aspects of health, from stress management to metabolism to hormones to the best exercise for you. Dr. Jade has worked in person with over 10,000 clients, and as a result, he has really become an expert in metabolism, hormones, and weight loss. He has a ton of published books out there. He has a podcast called Next Level Human, which is wonderful, and many other aspects to his business and what he puts out into the world. He has a unique depth of experience. He's a really great teacher and just all around a great human. Take a listen as we discuss all things muscle, metabolism, and mindset. I have with me Dr. Jade Teta. We're going to talk about some metabolism, some muscle, some mindset. We're going to kind of go all over the place. But Jade, would you mind just kind of filling us in on some of your background and how you got into the space in the first place?
Yeah, of course. And Heather, thanks so much for having me. Very sweet to be on with you. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. The best way to think about me, I'm kind of what you might call a hybrid health professional. I started as a personal trainer at 15 years old. People always raise their eyebrows at that. I say 15 because that's the first time I got paid to do personal training. I was 15. And of course, I paid my way through undergrad, which I did in biochemistry and naturopathic medical school as a personal trainer. And just one thing to know about me, actually, I was on my way after I finished my undergrad degree. I was on my way to East Carolina University Medical School, which is a traditional medical school. And I don't know why, Heather, but at that time, I had not even looked at the curriculum, right? I hadn't looked at, what I'm actually going to be learning. I just figured I'd be doing lifestyle medicine because that's what I was doing as a personal trainer, and all of a sudden I saw there was no exercise. There was no training in nutrition. There was no mindset, you being, sort of a mindset health professional. There was none of that. And I was just like, wait a second, there's nothing wrong with drugs and surgery from my perspective, but I didn't want to be doing that work. So it kind of sent me in sort of a early dark night of the soul kind of thing as a young, early 20 something.
Like,
I was
what
just
am
like,
I doing?
what am I going to do now? I found a little known school called Bastyr University that trained this weird sounding professional called a naturopathic doctor. And of course, I was like, I'm doing that. And of course, my friends, family, everyone's like, do not do that. Like, what are you, crazy? Like, that's like witchcraft medicine. Now, keep in mind, Heather, this is going back to, it's a while ago. It's like 97, 97 was when I started. So who had any idea that functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, all that stuff was going to become so big? And of course, so I became a naturopathic doctor, and that became sort of functional medicine. And I do, I'm a CEU provider for many of these organizations. So one of the things you get from me, in addition to personal training, is you get a functional medicine practitioner who's been practicing functional medicine for 20 years now. And then on top of that, I, went through some personal stuff in my life. I had an affair. I cheated on my wife. I went through like some of the dark night of the soul stuff of being a better human. And that pointed me into more of an interest in psychology and why we do what we do, which now has me doing that for the last 10 years and getting my PhD in transpersonal psychology. And so when you think about me, just take a personal trainer, throw them in a blender, take a functional medicine doctor, throw that in a blender, then throw a heavy dose of a psychologist in a blender, blend it all up, and you kind of have what I am. And hopefully that gets people understanding. And I call it mindset, muscle, and metabolism because that's my domain.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And also what I think makes you such a great person in this space to be helping others, because you kind of have the full range going there. Also, by the way, I just want to acknowledge a little bit of your vulnerability there and sharing some of those hard things in life. You and I should talk more on that. We can do that off air, but yeah, we appreciate that because that doesn't happen very often, you know. So I did just want to acknowledge that.
Well, you know, and one thing I'll just say briefly about that before we get into some of the things.
Yeah,
like to me, I do think that the authentic telling of your story of struggle and your learning is the fastest way to purpose. And I had to learn that the hard way, but you know, that's where the healing is. And what's really beautiful is that by telling those stories, we get to heal and help other people, you know. So
absolutely. You and I have very, very similar stories. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from and completely agree. And it's a beautiful thing when you can put it out there. I'm thinking we're probably around the same age. I'm about 50. And so are you in there?
I can't believe you're 50, but yes, I'm also 50.
Well, same. And I only know that about you because I've heard that, not because I think, oh yeah, you look 50. Just like, no, I've heard that. So we're in that same age. And I thought maybe we could use that to move into sort of the muscle part of what you do. And just your thoughts. I'm really into right now, this age, really trying to maintain my muscle. I know how important that is for everything, but just some of your thoughts on that and maybe some practical strategies on how those of us who are aging can really work at maintaining our muscle.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's really interesting for our generation, right? And anyone, you know, who's kind of in that 35 and up sort of age range, we came up through the lens of cardiorespiratory fitness, right? That's how we all sort of were oriented into fitness. Go for a jog, you know, get on a treadmill.
Oh, I was doing aerobics with my mom.
Yeah,
do
aerobics
and everything. Yeah.
All of that stuff, right? And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. And certainly it is very healthy for the cardiorespiratory system. But since, over the last 20 years, what we have seen is that having muscle and maintaining muscle is perhaps just as important, if not more, some research suggests, than anything else in our fitness endeavors. Partly because our muscle now we know is an endocrine organ, which means it's sending hormonal signals all around the body, which means by having adequate muscle and using that muscle, by the way, which is most important, right? So this idea, there's always been this idea that if you add more muscle, you'll burn all these extra calories. The truth is not really, but when you start to move that muscle, it starts to do magical things. And so now what we need to do is take a focus on maintaining and perhaps gaining muscle mass so that when we move this muscle, when we go for a walk, for example, we're releasing all of these biochemicals that are talking to our brain and making us have less cravings and less hunger, talking to our immune system and making us less inflamed, allowing us to age better, allowing us to lose weight and maintain it. Actually, one of the major ways that we have dysfunction in our weight loss efforts is that when we lose muscle, we're far more likely to regain fat as a result of that. And by the way, standard diets and aerobic based training programs have been shown to reduce 20 to 50% of lean mass. Now, a lot of that is water because water goes into the lean mass equation. But when we lose that muscle, that's one of the things that many of us think may be causing the inability to maintain our weight loss. So muscle is everything. So I think what you're speaking to here is this idea that we need to begin to focus on more of a muscle-centric sort of philosophy around our health, our fitness, and our fat loss. And one more thing I'll say here is that this doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are ways of building muscle and building cardiorespiratory fitness. And the shortcut to this is simply lifting weights faster. And I don't mean faster in terms of lifting speed. I mean shorter rest periods. When we do that, when we have shorter rest periods between lifting bouts, we can get also the cardiorespiratory component that we need as well. And this may be the best way to come about fitness and health and fat loss.
Yeah, I love that. Almost bigger bang for your buck. I mean, where you're getting, more for your time spent and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Do you still work with people? Do you still personal train people or no?
I don't, but what's funny, Heather, about that is that I oftentimes laugh about it. I still make most of my money off of workouts that I've built. So back in 2014, I believe it is now, I built a program called Metabolic Aftershock. And then I built in 2016 a program called Metabolic Renewal, which was the first, to my knowledge, was the first, funnily enough, to look at me, my major expertise is female endocrinology, the study of female hormones. Yeah. It's such a bizarre thing when you look at me. It's a little ironic. I've never had menses. I'm never going to go through menopause, but for some reason this became my work because those were my clients. And back in 2016, I built a workout program that was designed specifically for women. And that program just exploded. And I still make most of my money off of workouts, but they are workout programs, workouts that you follow along with. And one of the things actually that will get us deeper into this discussion that makes these workout programs different and special, especially for women, not that they don't work for men, but especially for women, is that they are what we call rest-based workouts. And what rest-based workouts mean is that rather than focusing on the work, we are focusing on the rest, because the more you rest, the harder you will work, and the harder you work, the more you're going to have to rest. More importantly, this individualizes the workout so that if you and me, Heather, are working out along with your listeners and we're all doing the same workout, we'll be resting and working at different paces according to our ability, according to our fitness level, according to our physical attributes. And so Heather might go for 2 minutes and need to rest 30 seconds. Jade might go 30 seconds and need to rest for 2 minutes, and there'll be everybody in between. Now, why this is important is because what the research now shows is that, believe it or not, we can overdo exercise. And when we overdo exercise, it can cause increased hunger. It can cause metabolic compensations that decrease metabolic rate. Actually, Herman Ponzer out of Duke University has done most of this research. He actually has a really popular book on it called Burn that goes through all of this research.
Yeah, I've read that book. It's awesome.
So, and the idea then is that when we do exercise, we want the Goldilocks zone. We want enough, but not too much. We want it just right. And by adjusting it according to our abilities, which means push until we can't, rest until we can, rest-based training, we get the Goldilocks zone. And this helps us, take care of our metabolism and not get some of the negative consequences of stressing out our metabolism from too much exercise. And this data is there. We need to be careful about it because we don't want to begin to over-exercise, stress out our system, and then begin to overeat. And what research has shown is about 25% of people who, over-exercise tend to overeat. 25% of them enough to outweigh the calories burned through exercise and even put on weight. And so we've seen this, but the rest of the industry seems to be slow to catch on. But I think people like you and me, professionals who have worked with people, we've seen this. I've seen this since the beginning of my career, going all the way back, into the early 90s. I've seen this and didn't understand it until probably the last 10 years, because now we have the data to understand it.
Yeah. Well, I am prime example of that. Wrecked myself with over exercise. Literally wrecked my thyroid with over exercising. And so really it was a personal journey for me that got me into all that stuff and actually reading that book and those sort of things. But yeah, I agree. As soon as I kind of recognized it in myself, what was going on, easy to pick out in specific clients. I don't know if you find this, a little bit of a tangent here, but I do find it seems to be a specific personality type. I see a lot of type A. For me, I see a lot of women 30s to maybe 50s who are just like hardcore hit. All the hit training all day long, no resting. I love that idea of the rest coming first, because it really takes away from that ability then to push into that place where there is no coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Heather, you being a mental health professional, on that side, to me, 100%, I've seen what you see. And I think it comes back to like looking at child development, polyvagal theory. It really comes back to that. And I'll just explain this to the listeners real quick.
Yeah, it'd be great.
The idea is like, let's all imagine we're on the plains of Africa and we see a lion. Now, when we see that lion, what's going to happen is we are going to be in threat mode, right? So that means we're going to fight, flight, sort of responses. Now, if the lion leaves, but we're still on the plains of Africa, what is going to happen is we will be in hypervigilant mode, striving mode. We won't be able to feel completely safe, and we'll be looking around constantly in case that lion comes back. Now, only when we get inside a house can we actually let our nervous system reduce the stress, and we don't have to worry about the lion coming and getting us at all. So one of the things that I've seen is that people through childhood development and adolescent development and young adult development and habitual responses to stress can get stuck in threat mode and striving mode. Now, threat mode is usually reserved for the people with the big capital T traumas in their lives. But striving mode is this type A personality. It's the type of person who cannot slow down, has to do, overdoes everything. And by the way,
cannot just be.
Cannot just be. And what that's doing, if we're in threat mode and striving mode, we are in stress mode and we are utilizing resources, draining those resources, putting our metabolism under stress. And when the metabolism is under stress, and here's what's key here, when the metabolism is under stress, it defaults back to its primary stress mechanism that it evolved with for millions of years, which is a starvation response, which means give me hunger, give me cravings, reduce metabolic rate. And then you're chasing your tail. And so I love what you're pointing out here, Heather, because I think it's completely missed. If you want to lose weight, if you want to get healthy, you need to also do something to regulate your nervous system in a way that is not overstimulating it. And exercise does not always do that for all people. It is true that for a large amount of people, exercise does help regulate the nervous system. It does create resilience in the immune system. It does create a resilience to stress. But for many other people, it does not. And we actually have a study on perimenopausal and menopausal women in the alpha beta trials that they looked at. They basically took these women and they basically said, hey, we want you to exercise 5 days per week for 30, 45, or 60 minutes, basically running on a treadmill. And they said, we don't want you to do anything different with your diet. And they followed them for a year. Now, imagine this. You don't do anything, and then all of a sudden me and Heather come to you and we say, hey, you're going to do 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or 60 minutes of treadmill jogging every day for 5 days for a year. Now, you would probably guess, well, I'm going to lose weight. By the end of that year, if I'm forced to do that, I'm going to look and feel amazing. Well, guess what? Only about 25% of those women looked and felt amazing. The other 75% did not. And 25% of those actually gained weight. And so we have this data. And the reason why I think that happened is because for some of these women, of course, not all, it's a very individual response. And we don't understand in the science yet exactly all the elements that are causing this. But for 25% of people, they actually were made worse from that because the exercise became more of a stress response. So now we have to add into our thought process about health and fitness. What am I doing with my diet, my exercise, my mindset, my rest and recovery activities, and everything else to regulate the nervous system so that I'm not under stress? And also realizing that exercise, when taken too far, when done too long, too frequently, or too intensely, can, for some people, not all, become a stress to the metabolism. And this is what I think we need to become aware of. And you rightly pointing out this striving threat safety response is important because these strivers oftentimes are the ones that don't get results.
Exactly. Yeah. You explained that absolutely beautifully. So that gets into too, we could talk a little bit about maybe fueling for exercise, because that's another part of this that I see, like the under fueling for people who are heavy exercise. So maybe I could just, for the listeners, this maybe gets a little bit more into the calories in, calories out debate. So maybe we could talk a little bit on that, because I think it is confusing. I know for a lot of my listeners and who I work with, it's very confusing. Like, okay, well, calories in, calories out. But, Jade, there's times where that's not always the case. Could you talk a little bit about that? Just in regards to how hormones play a part in that as well, why it's not just calories in, calories out.
Yeah, well, think about it like this. For everything you do to the metabolism, there's an action and a reaction, right? So think about this. A healthy calorie burning workout is neither healthy or calorie burning if, as a result of doing it, you end up overeating later.
Right.
A healthy calorie reduced diet is neither healthy or calorie reduced if as a result of eating it, you end up eating more and wrong things later. Right. So think about this. If I give you a chicken breast and a donut, right? That's all you get for the day. I'm going to give you either a chicken breast for breakfast or a donut for breakfast. Which is going to make you feel full for longer and make you eat better and have less cravings and more stable energy through the day?
Definitely the chicken breast.
The chicken breast is probably going to do that, right? The other thing is, how many chicken breasts can you eat? Now, most of us can eat 1, 2, 3. If you're me, you could eat 5 donuts. No one is going to eat 5 chicken breasts.
Right.
Now the funny thing here is they're the same amount of calories. You take your standard donut, it's about 250 calories. You take your standard 6-ounce to 8-ounce piece of chicken, and it's 250 calories. Yet they have completely different responses. The calories are the same, yet they have completely different hormonal responses. The same thing goes for exercise. You do 45 minutes on a treadmill jogging. What does that do to your hunger, your energy, and your cravings versus you do 45 minutes lifting weights? What does that do to your hunger, energy, and cravings? So if you want to know the secret here is realize that forget the calories just for a minute. Yes, they matter, but they only matter if they keep hunger, energy, and cravings stable. What drives hunger, energy, and cravings, by the way? Stress hormones play a whole big role in hunger, energy, and cravings. So do hormones like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and other hormones.
Just a quick interruption to talk about today's show sponsor, and that is Amino Co. Amino Co. is a company that produces essential amino acid supplements, and I have been using their Life formulation for a while now. Supplementing with essential amino acids has been shown to help with appetite control, as well as helping to support muscle maintenance and recovery. All their formulations have been tested in clinical trials, which show they enhance physical function and muscle strength and support heart health. I really like knowing that along with getting in my dietary protein, I am also supplementing with essential amino acids I want daily for my long-term goals of strength, muscle maintenance, and staying healthy as I age. So some quick protocols if you want to give some of their products a try would be if you're someone trying to lose weight, you could take a scoop mixed with water in the morning and again in the afternoon, usually when you notice your energy slumping to help boost your appetite control. If you're an endurance athlete and you're doing longer than 1 hour of endurance work, you could take 5 to 10 grams per hour. So when I do my long bike rides, this is what I'm making sure I take in every hour. And if you're someone who exercises or works out a lot, you can take a scoop in water before bed. That's been shown to help with recovery. So I want to share this with you because you're a listener of this podcast, you can try their products for 30% off. If you decide to give these a try because you could use some help with appetite control and or want a supplement for muscle maintenance and recovery, then use my referral link, which is aminoco.com/capital H 30. Again, that is aminoco.com/capital H 30. So you can go there, choose your product or products, and at the checkout code, you can use HH30, capital H 30 for 30% off your entire order. Or to make it easy, just go to the link below the episode description, and I have a link right there for you.
So the idea is you want to keep your hunger, energy, and cravings in check. I call this HEC, by the way. HEC, keep your HEC in check. So eat in a way that keeps your HEC in check. Exercise in a way that keeps your HEC in check. If HEC goes out of check, that tells you your metabolism is under stress. You do not want that to happen because when your metabolism is under stress, it begins to have compensatory reactions. Now, here's the other thing that I love that you're alluding to, Heather, and I know you know this. This idea is that you don't want to take somebody who's an overfed couch potato, right? There's a lot of people in America who are overfed and undernourished. We can call them the couch potato types. No judgment, but we live in a society where there's a lot of that. Now, there's also sort of the underfed, overworked type. Both of those are a stress to the metabolism. Both of those have hunger and energy and cravings out of check. Think about it. The dieter who's constantly reducing calories and constantly exercising, they're hungry. Their energy is unstable. They're having cravings. Guess who's also having that same response? The overfed, undermoved, not moving couch potato. They also have heck out of check. So we don't want to take people from couch potatoes to CrossFitting paleo people overnight. What we want to do is find that Goldilocks zone where we're eating in a way that is keeping heck in check, and we're exercising in a way that's keeping heck in check, so that we can then begin to regulate our calories. This is how it works. This is the better approach. And most people are ping-ponging back and forth between couch potato, dieter, couch potato, dieter. And the reason why they keep going back to couch potato is because they keep doing dieter. Instead, what they need to do is they need to move into that middle zone and think about regulating the nervous system, reducing stress, and doing this smarter, not harder.
Love that. Yeah. I talk a lot about making everything incredibly doable, which really turns into very small steps in regards to making big behavior change, and that's exactly what you're speaking to. And but I love it because you're explaining sort of what's actually going on in the body with the metabolism behind it, which then I think helps people just understand why that method is so much more important to participate in, rather doing these extremes or this very black and white swinging back and forth, That's the whole diet culture, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is. I think if I could give people sort of a new frame to look at metabolism, don't look at it as a calorie burning thing. Sure, metabolism is about energy management, but instead look at it as metabolism is more like a stress barometer. And if too much stress causes too much pressure on that barometer, and then things go haywire. So the idea is it's a stress responding and managing apparatus. The metabolism senses stress and responds to stress. So your ability to begin to reduce stress and make yourself more resilient to stress and find the Goldilocks zone in diet and exercise is going to be your ability to get success. And by the way, this is why I think people like Heather and myself also focus on mindset, because what you will see as we begin to have these conversations and you begin to change the way you interact with diet and exercise, you'll start to see, it's not just diet and exercise that influence hunger, energy, and cravings. It's also my mindset. It's also what I'm doing with sleep. It's also what I'm doing with rest and recovery. Like, how often am I taking walks, slow walks in the woods? How often, what am I doing with sex and physical affection? What am I doing with meditation? What am I doing with all these things that deregulate the nervous system and bring us down? Deregulate's the wrong word, but de-stress the nervous system. We need to put as much time and effort into rest and recovery as we do with diet and exercise. And then the other part is we also need our mindset to kind of move us into a resilient, growth-based mindset. Why are we doing this in the first place? Is it for culture level accolades and vanity concerns? Which, by the way, again, no judgment. You don't want no vanity at all, right? There's got to be some vanity, but is there a purpose behind it? Is there a why behind why you are doing this? And that is, so for example, I'm 50 now, as we talked about. And so for me, yes, I still have vanity, and that does play a role, and I'm glad I do. So I can still keep myself. If I had no vanity, I would not be as tight to my diet. And
Right.
But I also just go, I want to be vital. I want to be healthy, and I want to look the part when I'm on stage teaching, so that can inspire individuals. And by the way, it's hard, but that's why I do this now versus
you have
I want
a very
Heather
compelling reason.
Like to me, I go, having the six pack is not as compelling a reason anymore as having vital energy and looking the part.
Totally. Yeah. It's more of a bigger why, I would say, or a deeper why, where it's what is what's my purpose behind it? It's a little bit more meaningful, that sort of thing. I think too, Jade, to your point, like clarity on that. I work with clients really to help them find clarity behind that. Cause I think that clarity of your why, your bigger why, your compelling reason for why you're doing anything you're working on or trying to change, is so, I find it to be really important to get the process of change started, to keep people willing to continue to plug into that process. It's important.
Yeah. And actually speaking to that, right, I do think people sometimes they might hear me and they go, well, Jade, you teach and you write books and you're on stage, and that makes sense from that perspective. However, I'm actually not necessarily talking about that. What I'm talking about is when you're standing in the line at Starbucks or a coffee shop, or when you're getting on a plane, or when you're interacting with people. What we don't realize is that our vitality, and this is a whole other conversation about the energetics of humans and the human biofield and all that kind of stuff. Our vitality is extending out from our body. So not only our physical presence, where people can be inspiring, because fit people do inspire other people in this culture, because we know it takes work, it takes discipline.
Right.
So when they look at you, they feel that off of you. The other thing they feel is your vital energy. And when you're kind and you're loving, and you also just meet them as humans, that you don't realize just because I'm fit doesn't make me better in any respect of the word.
Right.
But this is who my authentic self is. And if I can offer an experience and an example to you the same way you do to me, that is the why. So now imagine your fitter, healthier, more vital self in front of people talking, and the way they're going to respond to you differently, and the energy that you bring into the room. From my perspective, when you're interacting with people, you have a choice. You bring a particular energy, you have a particular example that you set, and you create a particular experience with every single person you interact with. And your physical vitality and your look plays a role into that. So it doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing. It just tie it into the fact that this is going to make me better for my fellow humans. I'll be a better member of Team Human by being my most vital, healthy self.
Yeah, I love that. Completely agree. And again, very, very well put. How about you? Like, how do you have certain ways that you manage stress and kind of keep your mindset in check? And like, what do you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's hard, right? So, just because I'm an expert, we all know, like, I struggle with this stuff too. Part of the reason that I think I'm good at my work is because I've struggled so much through the process. I can put on fat really easily. I gain muscle really easily as well.
Same.
But, what I've learned, right? So what I've learned, though, is that if I'm going to be good at this, I must have particular activities that are unique to me, that de-stress me and help me be more resilient. And so I train less now than I used to, and that has been beneficial to me. So rather than 5 days, 6 days a week in the gym, I spend 3 to 4 days in the gym. In addition to that, rather than just doing high intensity interval weight training and all this heavy lifting, I now do yoga and breath work every single morning. And that helps me regulate my nervous system. And my stress reducing tool of choice is sauna and contrast hydrotherapy.
Awesome.
It's what I use, and I built that in my home, so that I could have that available to me. And then some other things that I do is walking in nature, and those would be my big ones. I spend an awful lot of time slow walking in nature. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina. I've got a greenway behind my house. That's where you are? That's where I am. Yeah.
That's a beautiful place.
It is. And I came from LA, where, beautiful in a different way. But
you bet.
I spend a lot of time walking in nature. That lowers stress. We know that. I spend a lot of time in sauna and contrast, almost near daily. I do rest-based training, where I don't try to kill myself, and I train a little less. And when I'm at my best, which I'm not always, I focus on protein primarily. You said something really interesting, Heather, which tells me what a good teacher you are. Like, one thing, right? I tend to go one thing, so when I hear that from you, I go, okay, Heather gets this too, that it's got to be a few things, like one thing. What's the one easy thing I can focus on with nutrition? What's the one easy thing I can focus on with diet? What's the one easy thing that I can focus on with mindset and relaxation? And so for me, with diet, the one easy thing is protein intake. I prioritize that, and everything else seems to balance. The one easy thing with exercise is rest-based training, regulating my nervous system. And the 1 to 3 easy things with the mindset stress reduction are walking outside and, sort of sauna therapy and contrast therapy. And those things, just those things, seem to be the big rocks for me that make all the difference in the world. Now, it took me some time to find that, but that's what seems to work. And I think if people could focus on that, these 3 to 5 big rocks that make 80% of the difference, it's going to be far easier for people.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you brought up protein, because that was on my list of things I wanted to talk to you about. So maybe we could just hop into that for just a moment. So I'm also a big protein pusher is what I call myself. You know, can you maybe talk a little bit to the listeners on why when we're talking about, maybe we're talking about weight loss, maybe we're talking about just optimal health, but why that protein piece in our diet, and maybe you could speak personally why you have that as number one, why that's such an important piece to the puzzle.
Yeah. Well, the simplest answer is it's the most satiating of the macronutrients for the vast majority of people. Now, we're all different. Satiating means when you eat hunger, you're far less likely to want to overeat or have cravings later. All right. So that's the first thing protein does. It's also the most thermogenic of the macronutrients between protein, carbohydrate, and fat, which also means it takes resources to digest protein, similar to vegetables and protein, fiber takes some resources. And so you have advantages there. The other thing that's really interesting about protein is it's prioritized for functional things versus energy. So in other words, when you eat protein, it goes to repair, it goes to muscle, it goes to other things besides just burning energy. It's very difficult to store protein as fat. You're going to store it as muscle. Combine that, by the way, with resistance training, and you end up storing it. But more importantly, from an evolutionary perspective, muscle is, if it makes sense, if our metabolism is a stress sensing and responding apparatus, and we have to move around in the world and protect ourselves and go search food, then we don't want to lose muscle. It is a protector. It's what gets us from point A to point B. So the body prioritizes that. And what we've seen in the research, something called the protein sparing hypothesis. It started out with rats. We're starting to see these studies in humans as well, which basically says when we diet and we lose protein, the body will want to recoup that protein as fast as possible, that muscle mass as fast as possible. And if we have a low protein diet, we will keep eating and keep eating and keep eating until we get the protein back. Now, if we have extra calories as fat and carb, we end up getting the protein back, but also storing a bunch of fat. And this was first worked out in rats, where they basically took different rats and they dieted them down, had them lose weight and lose muscle. And then they fed them a regular rat chow that was low in protein, a rat chow that is high in protein, and like a rat chow that is lower in protein, but had a higher fat and carbohydrate. And what these rats did is when they got the high protein rat chow, they ate, gained their muscle back, and stopped eating. But when they got the lower protein rat chow that was filled with carbs and fat, what they did is they kept eating and kept eating and kept eating until they got their protein stores back. And this is likely what is happening in us humans as well. And so by prioritizing protein as we're losing weight, we'll be less likely to lose the muscle. And by prioritizing protein after weight loss, we're less likely to overeat and overcompensate and gain that fat back. And so across the board, it has multiple effects. Now, let me just, for people our age, 35, and older, you probably heard protein is horrible for the kidneys and horrible for the liver and all of that kind of stuff. This is, in the research, been shown not to be the case. In fact, the only time that's the case is with people who have damaged livers and kidneys already, which is usually diabetics, which was caused by a high carb diet, not a high protein diet. So yes, if you've got liver damage and kidney damage, you do not want to be on a higher protein diet. However, being on a higher protein diet is healthy for the liver and kidneys. The high sugar and high fat diet is what's usually going to cause the kidneys and liver to fail. And so this idea that protein is somehow bad is an issue. Now, let me just give you a couple pointers here, because if you add a bunch of protein and fiber quickly to the diet, one of the benefits of it, it's slowly digested. So you can have gastric distress, gas, bloating, that kind of stuff. So just add it in slowly, and you'll see that it is going to regulate very well. The short code to this is just chicken and broccoli, chicken and kale, chicken and salad. This is, sort of, it's going to work. But of course, then we add in enough palatable things that make our food enjoyable as well. But mostly chicken and vegetables, or steak and vegetables.
You sound like an old bodybuilder.
Well, exactly, and I was, but and also for the vegans and vegetarians, because I know this will come up for all of you. Don't worry, you also have an advantage. Your advantage, though, is fiber. So fiber, fiber and protein. The fiber doesn't give you some of the muscle benefits, but it does give you some of the hunger, energy, craving reducing things. It seems, if you look at the research, that the combination of starches, sugars, fat, and salt. This is the stuff that's going to get you. So you kind of do have a choice. You can either go more protein-based, animal-based, and in that case, that's going to have some benefit. If you're more vegan, vegetarian, just make sure you're getting in vegetables, because I know a lot of meat eaters who eat way more vegetables than vegetarians and vegans. Most vegetarians and vegans are better described as starchians and starchitarians, because they're not actually eating a ton of vegetables. I know meat eaters and paleo people and primal people who eat a ton of vegetables, more so than even vegetarians do. So just keep that in mind if you are someone who's more plant-based. And by the way, there's all of these, as humans, we are opportunists in our diet. So we can thrive on many, many different types of diets. So this is the other thing that I think people get wrong. There is no one way to eat. There is just the best way for Jade, and the best way for Heather, and the best way for all of you. So pick whichever type of approach that you want, and then watch what happens with hunger, energy, and cravings, and body composition changes, and blood lab changes. And if what you're eating is causing you to attain and maintain optimal body composition, keeping hunger, energy, and cravings in check, and optimizing blood labs, then that is the right approach for you, whether it's vegan, vegetarian, paleo, primal, keto, or whatever it is. That's how you know. You got to be a metabolic detective to some degree when you're looking at this stuff.
How long do you think that usually takes? Like, would you say like 4 to 6 weeks before you can kind of start to notice if something's working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you'll notice in terms of hunger, energy, and cravings within a week, right?
Yeah,
like you'll know, and sometimes within a day, right? Like imagine, like think about it this way: like me and Heather, we wake up with all of you, and we all have breakfast, and half of you get blueberries and oatmeal, and the other half of you get eggs and bacon, and then the next day we switch. You're going to see a difference in your hunger, energy, and cravings for that day, right? And so then I would say the people who get better hunger, energy, and cravings and eat less and more healthy foods at the end of the day with oatmeal and blueberries should stick with the oatmeal and blueberries. And the people who got better results, ate less and healthier foods after having the eggs and bacon should probably have the eggs and bacon. So you can see it happen within a day. Then within a week to 3 weeks, you'll start seeing the body composition changes. Then you'll start to know, oh, this is working. And then within a month to 3 months, you'll start seeing the blood lab changes. And if those three things are happening, hunger, energy, and cravings in check, body composition, and blood labs all moving in the right direction, I really don't care if you're eating cotton candy and donuts. If that's if that's getting you the results, then that's what you should be eating. Now, of course, very few people on the planet, if any, are going to get those results from cotton candy and donuts. But
that'd be amazing.
Yeah, it would be amazing, right? But the point remains that your diet should be unique to you. One of the things I wish this industry would do, Heather, is understand that we are individuals. That's why rest-based training, your intensity needs to be individualized, and your diet needs to be individualized. And then even in the world that you and I work with, in the mental health world, when we're dealing with people in the mindset space, it's the same thing. We all have different wounds. We all have different struggles. We all have different stories that we tell about the world because of the development, our child development, teen development. We also have to maneuver through that individually. This is an individual game. And isn't it beautiful? Like, to me, I go, if you talk about purpose again, like the fastest path to purpose is telling your authentic story of struggle, right? And also living your authentic life, and just realizing that I'm unique and that I should play my game, not culture's game. And that's true in exercise. That's true in diet. That's true in the way I live my life.
Yeah, I absolutely couldn't agree more. And that can kind of move us into, I wanted to shift a little bit, and I'll get you out of here on time, but to maybe identity. And we have really, in getting to know some of your stuff, we have really similar philosophies on this in regards to making permanent change, or maybe I'll say sustainable change, behavior change. I've heard you say step one for change, it's not about habit change, it's about changing your story. I was like, oh yes, So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I love that we're in alignment on this, because it just says that it's really cool when you have practitioners that you respect that arrive to the same place where you go, okay, good, maybe I'm not the only one that sees it this way. Yeah,
validation.
Yeah, validation. But so the way I think about this is, most people, the whole industry has us all convinced it's habits and behaviors and willpower that we need. Well, habits and behaviors flow out of identity and beliefs. So identity and beliefs are deeper. So if you can't change your identity and beliefs, the habits and behaviors will never change. So what we've been doing is banging our head against the wall. Habits and behaviors. I just need to change my habits and behaviors. And it doesn't work the vast majority of the time because it's identity and beliefs that matter most. And by the way, what's behind identity and beliefs? Stories. And this is the part where people go, well, what's that mean? Well, when I was a kid sitting in elementary school, there used to be these long strings lying on the ground, yarn, I guess, from class. And I would pick them up and I was bored. So I would tie a knot in the yarn. And then I would tie a knot on top of a knot on top of a knot until I had this big ball of yarn. This is kind of how the stories that we tell about life are. Something happens in our child development and our teen development at a time where we don't have the know-how, the resources, the maturity, the understanding to deal with them. And so they're misguided, right? Decisions that we make about the world. I call them misguided, unconscious decisions, mud. They keep us stuck in the mud. And so these beliefs about life and about who we are and what we can do and all of that follow us like this big knotted ball of yarn. It's like this big ball of yarn that we're carrying on our shoulder that we've never actually looked at. All these stories that are influencing how we show up in the world. Carl Jung has a great quote for this. He basically says,
my favorite person of all time.
You mentioned Carl Jung, all the psychologists go nuts. But he has a quote that basically goes, if you cannot make the unconscious conscious, it will follow you around and you will call it fate, which reminds me of another quote. If you see the life as a war, you will find battles everywhere. This is speaking to this ball of knotted psychological yarn that you're carrying around. That influences your identity, which influences your beliefs, which influences your choices and actions, which influences your habits and behaviors. So if you really want to unravel this, you don't start at habits and behaviors. You start at identity, beliefs, and stories, and you begin to unravel this. Now, that's all well and good and interesting to say, but how do we do this? We simply go back to the stories of our pain mainly. I'll give you an example of this. When I was young, I was left, because it doesn't have to be a capital T trauma, but I was left at the baseball park. I had parents that had 4 kids and they were bringing people back and forth constantly. And then I was left there for about 2 hours at a time where I was about 7 years old and it started to get dark. And you can imagine I was terrified as a kid. I didn't understand the logical thing I understand now. What we understand now, all as adults, listen to this, like mom got home, looked at my dad and said, "Where's Jade?" And he goes, "What do you mean? I thought you were getting him." "No, I thought you were getting him." And then they jump in the car and go back and get me. Now, we can logically say that, but that has a deep-seated psychological response in my body. That little Jadey, that little boy still lives there. And there's a story about safety and security and about being left. I had a brother that teased me, right? You know, I thought it felt like bullying to me when I was a kid. And that then creates this psychological story I tell about safety and worthiness. I had, my mom was a volatile, emotionally, she was a young woman who had a mother wound herself. So she was emotionally volatile. That wrote a story about female emotions are not to be trusted because I never know what I'm going to get. Now, look how this follows me around in my life. I struggled in romantic relationships as a result of that. Even my my build, this big muscular body to some degree, is the armor I built because I was teased as a kid, right? So now we start to go, all right, I'm living these stories out and they're powerful and beautiful in one sense, but they also can hold me back. They can be misguided, unconscious decisions. I need to go back and see those in a different way. And we can use journaling techniques and meditation techniques. And now, of course, there's psychedelics. There's different things you can do to unpack these stories, but they do matter because they do determine our identity and how we show up to the world. I once had a client whose father yelled at her when she was playing hockey with her brothers, get off the ice rink. Hockey's not for girls. And that turned into a story of, I'm not an athlete. I can't be athletic. And that influenced her entire life. A minimal thing that we might just be like, that's silly. But as that little girl, it had an effect on her. And so we need to go back and look at how we've identified with who we are. And instead of defending our old identity, which is what people want to do, we need to dismantle our old identity and start to see ourselves differently. And by the way, we do this anyway all the time, right? None of us are like our 18-year-old selves. right?
Right.
We wouldn't want to have the same values and the same understanding. Of course, we've grown, but we don't realize in self-development that this idea of being authentic to ourselves is not being authentic to a past self or a current self. It's being authentic to our next level human, better selves. So we need to look at all these past struggles and go, how can I use them to be my superhero self, the better self? All of those things, perhaps, by the way, perhaps maybe that's the whole point of the game. Maybe we're here and we got all these struggles and all these trials and all these tribulations so that we can use them to grow to our higher selves. Maybe all these people who are a pain in the ass in our lives are not frustrations, but initiations. Maybe they're there so we can help to break the patterns. And we never look at it this way. But to me, once we can change our identity and our beliefs, habits and behaviors will flow out of that. And so from my perspective, this is where we start.
Yeah, I love that. Couldn't agree more. That's probably a really nice way to end this because we've moved from muscle, metabolism, weight loss, hormones, all those things into what I also believe is the very foundation of change and meaning and purpose and how we grow as individuals, how we change as individuals, and how we really create that life that's full of purpose and meaning, which also you made this point earlier, but really gets into how we show up for others in this world, which I personally believe is so important, and how we make not only ourselves better, but each other better. So I love all that. You are awesome. Tell the listeners where they can learn more about you. I know you have a ton of books. You have online courses. Fill us in on where they can where they can follow you, where they can find more about you.
Thank you, Heather. That's really sweet. JadeTeta.com, nextlevelhuman.com. And I have a podcast, Next Level Human.
It's a great podcast.
And on social media at Jade Teta, you can find me, and feel free to DM me. And I try to get back to those DMs. They take a little bit of time, but feel free to check in if any of this resonated with you. And Heather, thank you so much for your work. It's just really nice knowing there's practitioners like you out there doing the work you're doing. And thank you for being so gracious to have me on. I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you for all you share and offer. I really do want to say I appreciate your openness and just your emotional integrity that you put out there. This does not happen often in this space. And also you have this willingness to really stay dichotomous in your or not be dichotomous in your thinking, but to stay really flexible in your thinking. And particularly in the nutrition and fitness space, we do not see that. And I really appreciate that. And I really encourage the listeners to check out all your stuff and follow your stuff. You can learn so much, and you're putting a lot out there that's really, really important. So thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Guess what? I have a lovely discount code just for you, my listeners. The code is 10 off. That's 10OFF. And it will get you 10% off any one of my online courses, which now include Mastering Mindful Eating, Overcome Binge Eating, Overeating, and Emotional Eating for Good. And I also have a course on When You Want to Stop the Weight Loss Medication, a comprehensive guide to weight maintenance and mastery. So if you've maybe lost some weight using a medication and you're now wanting to go off the medication but keep the weight off, this is the course for you. And any course you buy, you keep the course for a minimum of 3 years, maybe longer. It just depends on how many are purchased. All courses are self-paced, and I promise you they are practical, meaning they don't just tell you what you need to do. You actually engage in the skills and strategies needed to make actual lasting behavior change. You learn how to do the what. Okay, all courses have multiple modules with multiple lessons. All include lots of examples, tips, and tricks to make things simple and clear. And you also get lots of downloadable resources, including the daily planning template that I use with my own clients, the exact protocol to use after a binge or an overeat has occurred to minimize its damage on your body and your mind. There are protein cheat sheets, research-based journaling prompts, and the literal how-to checklists on the skill you are learning about. And with the weight maintenance course, you also have a movement module that will help you figure out how to make a movement plan that fits your particular lifestyle and level of fitness. And you also have a natural appetite regulation module. So whether if you have never tried an online course to change behavior, or if you have, I just highly would recommend that you try one of these. I've put my heart and soul into both of them. They are all research-based, and now you can get 10% off. So again, that code is 10OFF. If you're ready to make changes that last, you can go to my website, heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from the main menu, click courses, and it will get you to where you want to go. Or you can click on the links in the episode description below the show. And again, as soon as you're there, when you're ready for checkout, just enter the code 10OFF, 10 off. And just a reminder, I also have an ebook cookbook that is now available. It's called Protein Forward Easy Recipes. It includes all high protein recipes, including breakfast and sweet treats full of protein, and lunches and dinner. Okay, so again, head to my website. It's probably the easiest thing to do. heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from there, go to courses or the cookbook. And again, use code 10 off at checkout. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen, and there you will find links to my online courses, how I work with clients one-on-one, as well as online with my coaching and counseling services that I offer. The information in this podcast is intended to provide a broad understanding and knowledge of healthcare topics. This information is for educational purposes only and should not be considered complete and should not be used in place of advice from your physician or healthcare provider. We recommend you consult your physician or healthcare professional before beginning or altering your personal exercise, diet, or supplementation program.